at Young Adult Literature Convention. And I want to thank the previous author, Amy Bichel, and thanks to all of you for being here, if virtually. I also want to mention Rachel Churcher and Taller Books and the YALC for inviting me to speak today. I'm really delighted. So I'm Lisa Braver Moss, and I'm the author of the award-winning novel Shrug. By the way, I'm running a giveaway today, so please stay tuned because I have 2 copies of Shrug to give away, and I'll explain the criteria at the end of my presentation. So Shrug is a coming-of-age story that takes place in Berkeley, California, during the chaotic 1960s. Teenager Martha Goldenthal just wants to do well at Berkeley High School and apply to college, but her home life is a cauldron of kooky ideas, psychological warfare, and domestic violence. Along with older sister Hildy and younger brother Drew, Martha must navigate her way in life with 2 volatile, destructive parents. In addition, Martha is saddled with a nervous tic, a shrug of the shoulder. So I think I'll start now with the scene that takes place at home in the Goldenthal household. My mother had been scrubbing the sink with Ajax while the iron was heating up. An ugly old pair of 2-toned blue rubber gloves was draped across the counter, and the place smelled like a swimming pool. It was almost as if we were a household where stuff got done. I can't even remember now what the fight was about. The point is, my father came at my mother with his fists and started pounding her shoulders and her head. The hot iron toppled over onto the fabric. Neither Hildy nor I had a chance to pick the iron up or unplug it because we were busy shouting, "Stop it! Stop it!" at my father and trying to pry him off my mother, and also trying not to trip over the cord and trying to make sure our parents didn't either. Drew, who had been upstairs playing in his room, came running down, crying and adding his little voice to ours. "Stop it! Stop it!" But my father kept hitting, and my mother kept shrieking and trying to hit back. The Ajax scent was eclipsed by the smell of hot cotton, then singed cotton, then burnt cotton. All of a sudden, what flew out of my mouth was this: "You pathetic goddamn bastard! Stop it!" Hildy and Drew gasped. My father whipped around. I knew I was about to get pummeled, or at least slapped hard across the face. But then my father grabbed the hot iron. At first, I thought he was just taking it off the burnt fabric to set it upright. Instead, he pushed the iron through the air toward my face, too close. I didn't flinch or shrug, because it was the kind of situation where you only get it afterwards how terrifying it was. In that first split second, I just stared at my father with hatred. Then I realized Hildy and Drew and my mother were all screaming, and I had darted backwards. My mother was still in a pile on the floor, shrieking, "You son of a bitch, stop!" and scrambling up. It was Hildy who struggled with my father for the iron. My father was stronger, but luckily all he did was yank it away and send it clattering onto the vinyl tile floor, though Hildy did have to do a little foot dance to avoid its hitting her. My mother was upright by this time, but still hysterical and completely useless. My father ran out of the house, slamming the door so hard behind him that the windows shook as if we were having an earthquake. 2 of the vinyl floor tiles got ruined, and by the way, they've never gotten fixed. But at least he was done hitting for now. Afterwards, my mother stomped upstairs and climbed into bed, crying loudly. Hildy unplugged the iron and put it on the tile kitchen counter to cool, then peeled my father's iron-shaped, black tattooed shirt off the ironing board and took it to the garbage can at the side of the house. Drew and I cried, wiping our noses on scratchy paper napkins. I wished we had Kleenex, like other families. No doubt we needed it more than other families. But of course, there was some goddamn reason why my mother didn't believe in Kleenex. All afternoon, I kept going up to check on my mother, who was in bed, alternating between crying so we could hear, and then not crying for a while, and then starting up again. In between, I called Stephanie and told her about the fight. Her parents fought too. In fact, her father had recently moved out, and her parents were on the brink of divorce, so she understood what I was going through. I left out the part about the hot iron until the very end of the conversation because I knew Stephanie would have a spaz about it, which she did. Later, Hildy boiled up some wagon wheel noodles, my favorite, and put lots of margarine and salt on them for dinner. But I was jumpy, and so was my shoulder, and that's how I was the next day too. When I got to English and Stephanie told me we were having a sub, my eyes filled with tears because things weren't the same as they always were at school. I didn't want Stephanie to think I was a crybaby, especially about something as stupid as that. So I said I was still really upset about yesterday's fight at home. So, meanwhile, while all this is going on in the home life, Martha's father, Jules, owns a vinyl record store and a smoke shop located directly across the street from the University of California's Berkeley campus. Because of its central location, the shop is ground zero for the anti-war protests and rioting of the time. In this scene, Martha and younger brother Drew have been walking to the store along with friend Clifton. Clifton is a little bit younger than Martha. Bancroft Way was completely closed to traffic. In a row that stretched way down the block below Telegraph, there were a bunch of policemen in helmets, one next to the other, all facing the campus. Other cops had batons and gas masks and guns across their bodies, all at the same diagonal angle, and it looked like the ones in the line did too. As if in opposition to the row of police, people were lined up on the student union balcony, facing them, or maybe just watching, I couldn't tell. There was also a huge crowd milling around across the street. I craned my neck and could see there were tons of people further into the campus too, all the way to Sather Gate and past it. Black flatbed trucks, each one with a 5-pointed white star on it, were lined up behind the row of police. Then police started crossing into Holy Hubert's area. Over the din of the helicopters, I heard a voice. "I'm requesting you all to leave the plaza." I squinted up at the balcony of the Student Union building, where a police officer, or maybe a National Guardsman, was using a bullhorn. All I caught was that something was going to be dropped in the next 5 minutes. Clifton looked up at me as there was a roar from the crowd. "What are chemical reagents?" He'd heard better than I had. Whatever the hell chemical reagents were, they didn't sound healthy for children and other living things. I shoved Drew inside first, then Clifton. "Martha, Drew!" Hildy greeted us with a furrowed brow, coming out from behind the counter where Bob Metcalf was poking at his own eyes with his thumb and middle finger. He had just recently started wearing contact lenses, and it looked like he was trying to get them out. "What are all those trucks for?" I asked, not even taking the time to introduce Clifton. "They called out the National Guard," Hildy said breathlessly. "The helicopters are so they can shoot off tear gas. Dad says all hell's going to break loose. The point is, you shouldn't have come." "Shitballs," said Drew. "Well, how were we supposed to know?" I said lamely. Of course I should have known. It seemed so obvious in retrospect. I should never have brought Drew and now Clifton into a dangerous situation. Everyone said, trust your instincts. No one ever explained what to do if your instincts were stupid. My father ran up from the record area, practically jumping out of his skin. "What are you doing here?" he demanded as Clifton shrank back with his skateboard. Half an hour ago, I had actually thought my father might be happy to see me. I never came to the store unless it was scheduled. Drew needed a shot at the doctor and Mom wasn't, and then Clifton. We heard the bullhorn amplified voice again. "Vacate the area. Please cooperate." "We wanted to surprise you, Dad," Drew said. "See what I got?" He showed my father the skull. Jesus Christ, get the hell out of the way, all of you! At first I thought he was telling Hildy, Drew, Clifton, and me to go up to the tiny mezzanine, but my father reached in his pocket for the keys to the apartment just as we heard two loud pops that sounded like guns. We could hear people screaming across the street, police shouting with bullhorns. Clifton read my panic. Don't worry, Martha, he said, putting a hand on my shoulder. We'll be okay. 3 more pops and some hissing. Now, my father yelled at Hildy, throwing her the keys. But it was too late because suddenly a huge, thick, white cloud of tear gas was whooshing our way. Get behind the counter! Down! Down! My father shouted at us. All of us kids squished behind the cash register alongside Bob, who had managed to get out one contact lens, but not the other. Clifton was somehow able to lodge his skateboard under the counter. I didn't see, so much as hear, a stampede of shouting people, louder as it thundered toward the store. I wanted to know what was going on, but now it hurt too much to open my eyes. Hildy had grabbed Drew's hand, and without even thinking, I grabbed Clifton's. He gave back a comforting squeeze. An unexpected warmth spread through my body. Sexual warmth. Jesus Christ, Clifton was 13 and a goody-goody. Just one more example of trust your instincts not applying to people like me. Meanwhile, stabbing pain attacked my tightly shut eyes, and tears coursed down my cheeks. A bunch of people, 12, 20, 30, were now in the shop. I opened my eyes to a squint and immediately slammed them shut again. My father had locked down the telegraph door against the stampede and the cloud of noxious fumes, and was now securing the Bancroft door. It didn't make sense. Why would he want to trap the tear gas inside our store? But as another wave of people rolled toward us, I realized my father felt that the crowd was more of a danger than the chemicals. In between coughs into the crook of my arm, my father was barking orders. He'd taken some ratty old towel from behind the cash register to stuff under one of the doors. Then he grabbed a stack of small brown paper bags and started crumpling them up one at a time and tossing them at the people in the store. I was confused until I realized he was having everyone shove the bags under the doors in the space where more gas was getting in. I heard coughing, crying, gasping, whimpering. Bodies were jammed up right next to the glass display case that my father always worried was fragile. There were so many people squished into the narrow space that I was sure the magazine stacks on the floor were being scuffed and creased, the vertical metal racks bent. I huddled next to Clifton, my hand still in his. Outside, someone was vomiting, and that made me gag too. Are you kids all right? Bob kept asking in between coughs. I can't see a damn thing. Okay, I think I'll stop there. And I need to scroll down here for comments. Oh, they're just hi and so on. Okay, great. Thank you. Before we go to questions, Q&A, I just want to say it took me a long time to write this book. For one thing, Shrug is fiction, but I drew on my own experiences to write it, and it took a long time for me to sort of detach from the main character enough to really craft the book and simultaneously to let it take off on its own. In fact, the manuscript sat in a drawer for years. Every so often I'd take it out and have a look and instantly see what was wrong with it and then revise it. And then I'd ask for feedback from readers, and then I'd address their feedback, and then I'd shop the book without success. Back in the drawer it went. This routine happened so many times that I wrote all my other books in between. So this is my latest book, but it's also sort of my first book. Anyway, I just saw a little question saying, why did I decide to set the book in the 60s? Well, the 60s was a time of tremendous cultural upheaval and change. And it's a period that I lived through. So this book is autobiographical, and many of the experiences in the book it really did happen. Some of them not. But I wanted to set the book in the 60s because I liked the juxtaposition of the violence going on at home and the upheaval and unrest going on the streets of Berkeley. And I thought it would make for a compelling read. Let's see if anybody else has comments. What made you want to set the book in the 60s? Okay. All right. Keep coming with the questions if you'd like. What else do I want to say here? As I said, there's a lot in this book that's autobiographical, and I really had to decide whether to make Shrug a memoir or a novel. Of course, you do have some creative license with memoir, but this wasn't quite right for Shrug. I researched the period details very carefully because I didn't remember all of them. But for family events, I didn't want to get derailed by trying to investigate what actually happened and what didn't actually happen. I just thought it would be an easy way to get completely discouraged. So I wanted to create a read that was emotionally true and not necessarily factually true. Although the period details are factual. And then also, do you plan your plot or do you write to discover your story? Okay, I'll talk about that in just a minute. So I was just going to finish and just say that once I kind of got the teenage voice, things fell into place for me in terms of how I was able to write the book. Let's see, that last question, do you plan your plot or do you write to discover? This was a situation where the plot was pretty consistent in my mind before I started. I had the structure kind of planned out. So in general, for my other novel, I also had the plot pretty well worked out and sort of knew what I wanted to do with it. But I don't know, this book being autobiographical, it was, the material was there for me, and it was a matter of my crafting it and shaping it into something really that would take off as a fiction book. Let's see if I can find. Okay, any other questions? Just keep them coming. What am I working on now? Well, I'm working on some essays, and I'm toying with another book, but right now it's only toying. I have notes for it, and I'm imagining and letting it percolate, but I'm not quite ready to start working on it yet. So I'm turning my attention to creative nonfiction. I like to write personal essays, and I've done quite a few of those since the book's been published. Oh, you love toying. Amy Bieshel's writing, I like toying. I love toying. It's the best part. Yeah, toying with ideas, and it is really a lot of fun. So let's see, what else do I want to talk about? If anybody else has any questions, I think I have about 5 minutes left. Time flies when you're having fun. So when did I start writing? Okay, so I started writing early on. I mean, I was a big letter writer when I was a kid. I didn't have a journal, but I started writing seriously when I was not till I was in my 30s. And I didn't start writing fiction until I was a lot older than that. So my first novel came out, in 2010. So I've been writing for some time. Rachel had a question too. What was it? Let's see if I can find it. Oh, it slipped my mind. Rachel, can you post that again? All right. Scroll for old comments. Let's see. Scroll. It's not scrolling. Okay. What are my essays about? Okay, thank you. It wasn't Rachel. It was Josh. Okay. What are my essays about? They are generally personal essays about how I'm responding to something. They're how do I even put it? It's some of the challenges that are there for me, coming from this kind of background with domestic violence and sort of psychological warfare. So I write about how that's affected this or that current event in my life. I write about that, and I write a lot about, I have written a lot since this book came out about various aspects of living with that trauma and developing ways to kind of cope. And I think some of the challenges that I have are one might be surprised that I still have them, but I think that's sort of the story of how we all evolve as human beings. You know, it's it's always a little bit of a challenge in a new situation to be self-aware enough to know what's actually going on internally and then to kind of cope with it accordingly. Let's see if you have, do you plan your plot? Okay, have you been able to write in lockdown? It's been very hard for me. It's been very hard for me, and I don't quite know why. In a way, it's the best possible environment because it's quiet, and I'm at home, and I have a lovely place to write, and so on. It's been difficult, though. There's something about it that is making me jumpy, and so that's why I've been enjoying writing shorter pieces. So I'm curious how other people are doing too in terms of writing during lockdown. Yeah, I was hoping it I was hoping it would be a perfect time to finish something, and I really haven't other than these essays. But okay, let's see. Scroll to bottom. Tell us about your writing spot. Oh, I have an airy, A-E-R-I-E. I have an airy. I have a little attic that that is, you can see in the background that all kinds of crazy angles in this writing space. And I really enjoy it, and it's just very quiet and lovely, and I have the window and I can look out at the trees and so on. So it's really great. I just got this writing space about a year ago. I was literally a kitchen table writer for years. So I now have my space, and it's wonderful. Okay, and what else? 9:22. Okay, I'm about to. Oh, I should tell you about my giveaway. All right, don't forget to enter the Shrug giveaway for a prize. One signed paperback copy of Shrug for each of 2 winners. So this is eligibility is U.S. only. So in order to enter, you agree to write a brief review of Shrug and put it on Amazon. And you email me, lisa@lisabravermoss.com. I'll be accepting emails on this until Monday, July 27th. That's 2 days from now at noon, Pacific time. Not London time. And yeah, just write to me if you're interested in writing a brief review of Shrug. I will send you a free signed paperback copy if you're one of the 2 winners. Oh, and I should also mention this giveaway that I'm doing is mine alone. It's not affiliated in any way with Taller Books, YALC, or Twitter. So in the minute I have left, I just want to thank Young Adult Literature Convention again, and Rachel Churcher in particular again. She's been just an amazing champion of this event, and I don't know how she's had the energy to do all of it, but I'm in awe. The next author is Rae Knightley, R-A-E Knightley, and she's next up. As I said, the email for the giveaway is lisa@lisabravermoss.com. So thank you very, very much. And I think I'll wrap up now. If there are no more questions, I'll wait 1 minute just to see if anybody else would like to talk about anything quick. Let's see what this thing says. Okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you so much. Enter the contest. I look forward to hearing from you, and I thank everyone for this wonderful opportunity. I truly enjoyed it. Thanks, everybody. Rae Knightley is next.